Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. If you're a returning listener, it's great to have you back. If you're new to the channel, we're really glad you joined us. We hope you like what you hear. Our podcast is for people that want to learn something new or make themselves a little bit better every day. So today, we're going to talk about and give you 5 tips to learn to control your emotions. We're focused on difficult conversations, but these are tips that you can use anywhere in your life. Um, Controlling your emotions is one of the most important things you can do if you want to have a happy, productive, successful life. Because if people know that they can talk to you about anything without fear of judgment, without you flying off the handle, without dealing with difficult environment, it's going to make you so much more attractive as an employee, as a partner, as whoever. And look, we speak from experience here because we are not touchy feely at all. And we, earlier in our life, were very volatile, very explosive, would fly off the handle at little things, and did a horrible job of controlling our emotions. And we've learned through the years because we want to be successful. We're not interested in being right most of the time. We want to be successful. And we learned that you can still be direct, straightforward, honest, and tell the truth, but do it in a way that's easy for other people to receive. And so that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about bootlicking. We're not talking about acquiescing. We're not talking about giving up on your morals or values. Those are non-negotiables for us personally, and I think they are for most people, and that's great. But you don't have to be a jerk about it, and that's what we're trying to do here is give you some tools and some ways to control your emotions so that you can keep conversations productive. It'll help you maintain relationships, and it will prevent regret down the road. Because how many times have you said the passive aggressive little thing? And look, that's our joke, right? We're not passive aggressive, we're just aggressive. That's just how we are. But you can do that in a way that is not confrontational, it's not off putting to other people, but you don't have to sacrifice your beliefs in order to have productive conversations and get along with people. You can get along with people that you don't think the same way you do. You can get along with people that don't agree with you. You can get along with people who you disagree with. You just have to learn to control and compartmentalize your emotions and think through things logically. So that's what we're going to talk about. And this really comes down to compartmentalizing things and processing the information and stripping the emotion out of the situation. So we learned this. This is the place we learned it the best was playing baseball. So I was a pitcher, and if I threw a pitch that I thought was a strike, I would whine and complain and visibly show up the umpire. Now the question becomes: is that smart to do in the first inning of a 9 inning game? Do you think he's going to give you pitches that are close if you are throwing a tantrum every time you don't get one? Or if you don't react and just throw the same pitch again just to prove, hey, I meant to throw it there. That's a strike. I need you to call it. That approach, we found it to be much more effective. But that took some learning. That took some time for us to understand that we were competitor and wanted to win so badly. We would let our emotions get the best of us and we would do stupid stuff. And that translates into the real world. So that's what we're talking about today. Here's some tips that you can use to control your emotions. So, tip number one: pause. This one's really important. You don't have to respond immediately. It doesn't make you look smart. It doesn't win the argument. It doesn't put the other person back on their heels. All it does is allows a knee jerk reaction to slip out, and that's rarely productive. Now, sometimes you may hit it out of the park, but look, a broken clock is right twice a day too. That doesn't mean that you want a broken clock on your wall. You want a clock that tells time right all the time. And you want to be calm and rational and approachable all the time, especially from a leadership position. That might be leadership at work. It might be a coaching a sports team. It might be in your book club. It might be in your personal relationships. But if you want to be a leader, if you want people to come to you and show value in their lives, then you need to be consistent. And the best thing you can do first is remain calm. Take a deep breath. Before you speak, take a deep breath. And you can do it visibly. Whatever, doesn't matter. Count to 3, count to 10. You don't have to respond right away. So let's say, in a real world example, let's say you're in a meeting and someone criticizes you or your work in the meeting at work. So before responding defensively and saying, hey, Jeff, or hey, Betty, what the fuck? Instead of saying that, say nothing. Just pause. You can ask a clarifying question. I think what I heard you say is, or could you repeat that? I'm not quite sure I heard that correctly. And it buys you time to develop a response, to control your emotions, to stay grounded. So that's tip number 1, is just pause. You don't have to respond immediately. Sometimes you have to respond at all. Like, just because someone asks you a question, are there certain circumstances where you have to answer? Sure. If your boss says, hey, where's that report? Not answering that question, probably not a good idea. But if someone says, why did you say that? You don't have to respond to that. Just don't respond. If it's upsetting or if you think it's going to make the situation worse, just don't say anything. That's perfectly acceptable. Now, that makes a lot of people uncomfortable because it leads to what I call the uncomfortable silence. But the uncomfortable silence is your friend. And we'll talk about that a little bit further down the road. So tip number 1 is just take a beat. Just pause. You don't have to respond right away. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is reframe the situation in your head. So that helps shift the perspective from a personal attack, which is what a lot of us kind of turn to. Like, we immediately think, hey, they're attacking me personally. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. But if you want to have a constructive conversation and get to the bottom of the comments, you've got to reframe it in your head. And we say this a lot. If someone says something and it can be interpreted 2 ways, one way is positive and one way is negative, always assume it's positive until you can discern that, hey, they actually meant that negatively. They meant that as a shot. So instead of coming out of the gate thinking, hey, they're attacking me, think, you know what, maybe I need to clarify this with them. Maybe they're just misinformed. Maybe they don't know all the information. Maybe I didn't explain it very clearly. Give people the benefit of the doubt until they prove you should not. So again, you got to reframe that. Don't think, hey, they don't respect me. Think, this is an opportunity for me to make this crystal clear to the audience that I'm talking to. So another real world example using a work situation, let's say you come up with an idea and someone says, no, that'll never work. Instead of shutting down or crying in your beer, feeling sorry for yourself, reframe it as an opportunity to ask questions and understand their perspective. So I get it, you're really experienced. Why won't it work? Like, what are your concerns? What are the things we have to overcome in order for that to work? So reframing it in your head instead of taking it as a personal attack is a great way to go. So that's tip number 2. Reframe it in your head as an opportunity to clarify, an opportunity to further the conversation, an opportunity to have more conversation about the topic. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3, use physical techniques to stay grounded. So this might sound crazy, but it works. We talk a lot on the channel about deep breathing, right? So there's a technique called box breathing where you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold the breath for 4 seconds, and then you exhale for 4 seconds, and then you wait 4 seconds to breathe again. So that's one way to do it. We talk about the cleansing breath. Deep breath in through the nose, exhale out through the mouth. That resets your nervous system. It calms you down. It has a very soothing effect on your nervous system, your parasympathetic nervous system, and it is very, very useful. Another thing you can do is make sure that your feet are planted firmly on the ground. Believe it or not, if you're sitting in a chair and you don't have both your feet on the ground, that can feel disconcerting and like you don't have control of the situation. By having a firm control of your physical surroundings, that will help you stay more grounded. Another thing you can do is hold on to something small, a pen. Don't use your phone because you want to be, surfing Facebook or Instagram while you're in a meeting. But a pen, a notepad, a book, paperclip, something that takes your focus off of hey, they're attacking me, right? It gives you a distraction. It keeps you physically grounded. So let's just say, for example, you're negotiating something that's charged, or you're having a charged political conversation. Focus on your breath. Think about, hey, how am I breathing? And make sure you're taking deep breaths. Make sure you're staying grounded. Make sure you're staying calm, because getting excited and trading barbs back and forth is rarely a good idea. I know a lot of people post a bunch of that shit on the internet. I personally don't find it super productive or super useful, but there is value in having productive conversations where two people disagree with each other. And when we've seen that at its best, there's a good exchange of ideas and a mutual respect between the two parties. And using those physical techniques, the breathing, whether it's box breathing or the cleansing breath, like we've talked about, making sure that you're comfortable in your surroundings, your feet are on the ground, you have something to hold on to with your hands, whether it's a pen or something else, that can help, and it will help you negotiate and or exchange your thoughts from a place of confidence. Tip number 4, and we talked about this earlier, use strategic silence and active listening. It's very powerful when you don't say a lot. Because, so I think a lot of people think, hey, I've got to look smart, I've got to use big words, I've got to say a bunch of stuff in order to convince people how intelligent I am, how good my arguments are, how good my plan is. That's actually not the case in most instances. So by being quiet, asking questions and being quiet and let the other person talk, it diffuses tension. It helps the other person feel like you're listening to them and hearing them, because you are actually listening to them and hearing them. And it really just takes the temperature down in the room. So like we talked about, if someone says something to you that could be offensive, could be a personal attack, could be controversial, instead of responding, just say, I hear what you're saying. Let me think about that for a second. Or parrot it back to them. It's called mirroring. I think what I just heard you say is this. Do I have that right? And then don't say anything. Like, let it sit out there. It's okay for silence to be part of the process. And asking those clarifying questions allows you to slow down the conversation and sometimes shift the focus away from a negative or a controversial topic to a less controversial topic. So if you're having a personal disagreement with someone, using the pause or the silence and asking clarifying questions and then actively listening to the answer instead of formulating your response while they're talking, just listening to them. And then take some time to formulate your response. That silence will help calm things down. It will help you formulate your thoughts more clearly because you're not trying to do two things at once. And it makes the other person feel really, really heard, like they're having a productive conversation with you. So it's super useful. It can de-escalate. It takes the temperature in the room down. It allows them to express everything they want. It allows them to think through their responses. It allows them to listen to you because they feel like they've said what they wanted to say and that you've heard it. So the pause and the clarifying questions and the active listening is a huge tool to help you control your emotions, because you'll feel like you're having a much more productive conversation with someone because you are. Okay, and then tip number 5, you can have go-to phrases or a pre-planned phrase or response or responses that you use if you find yourself unexpectedly in these situations. So if you know that someone raising their voice at you or using a specific word or a certain behavior or activity really makes your blood boil, you know that it's challenging for you to maintain your calm, have a go-to phrase or phrases that you can use to kind of let the air out of the balloon in those situations instead of letting it escalate. So you can use some self-talk too, but look, we'll share a couple of our phrases with you. One of the phrases we use is if someone is really getting animated or worked up, I'll just ask them, are you okay? Like, just like that. Are you okay? And then don't say anything. Let them respond. But when someone is coming across like they're unhinged or like they just are losing control of their emotions or losing touch with reality, Just ask them, are you all right? You okay? Seem really worked up. Like, that's a good one. That lets the air out of, like, it really puts people back and makes them think about the behavior that they're engaged in. And then you can tell yourself too, hey, this isn't personal, or hey, this person may have other things going on in their life that's driving this behavior, and I don't know what they are, but I need to take control of this situation, or it's going to get ugly. So the other thing you can do is ask, a clarifying question here as well after your pre-planned response. So, are you okay? Or I heard what you said, and then, or I appreciate your feedback. Right? Those are good ones too. And then you can say, can you clarify X, whatever X is? Can you clarify what it is that upsets you about this? Can you clarify what it is you don't like about this plan? Can you clarify what you're concerned about? But having a pre planned phrase so that if you find yourself quickly in a situation you didn't expect to be in, you've got kind of a go to help keep things in a rational, useful, productive situation instead of letting it escalate quickly. So those are our 5 tips, guys. Just to recap them real quick. Pause, right? Pause before we react. Reframe the situation in our head. If it can be interpreted 2 ways, interpret it the positive way, and then investigate to see if it actually was meant the negative way. Use your physical techniques, breathing, feet on the ground, hands on something stable, or holding a small object that will help you feel grounded. Use silence, asking questions, and active listening. And then tip number 5 is have a pre-planned response so that if you find yourself in these situations unexpectedly, you have a go-to. So those are our tips for today, guys. That's the episode. We use all of these on a regular basis. Now, we're not super excitable by nature unless we're in a competitive situation, and then we're hyper excitable. But we've learned these techniques over the years. They work for us. And we suggest pick one, just pick one and work on that for a while, and then incorporate another one, and then incorporate another one. And pretty soon you'll see that you're pretty good at handling these situations. But the worst thing you can do is run from them, and you don't want to acquiesce. You don't have to validate a viewpoint you disagree with. You simply need to acknowledge that somebody else holds it. You can acknowledge they hold a viewpoint while still disagreeing with it, and that's actually very productive, and it shows strength, shows mental character, mental strength on your part. So when you feel yourself starting to get worked up, think about one of these 5 techniques, put it in practice, and see if it helps you kind of take the temperature down a little bit. So that's the episode for today, guys. Really appreciate you stopping by. James puts it up over here every day. Go to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All of our podcast episodes are available there. We've got links to all of our social media accounts there. And then we also publish a newsletter every weekday that you can subscribe to on our website. So we pick 2-3 current events. We give a tip of the day. We give a quote of the day. We tend to let loose a little bit. We're a bit sarcastic. And what we try to do is point out, hey, here is a topic. Here's how we think about it. We'd like to know what you think about it. So also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on the channel on whatever platform you consume it on. Super helpful. We'd love to hear from you. Do you have techniques that you use? Have you used these techniques and had success or failure with them? How do you think about the topic that we're talking about today? We'd love to hear it from you guys. So that's the episode for today, guys. Thanks again for checking us out. We really appreciate the support, and we'll see you on the next episode.